Welcome to another Talktail session. Today we have with us Dr. Murali Padmanabhan. He is one of the most important people in my life because he's been a very big guiding support, a guiding presence in starting of my professional career, and not just professional skills. I have been able to learn a lot of pivotal life skills from him. He has been extremely institutional in that aspect of my life. He comes with many decades of rich background in leadership coaching and organizational development by working in leading organizations like TCS, Deloitte, Watusa. He brings about a great unique blend of academic depth with real world experiences, and I think he's played an institutional role in creating an inspirational space for individuals to be able to navigate change, to be able to lead with authenticity and explore their own potential in their spaces. Today, I'm inviting Dr. Murali Padmanabhan for this Talkatail session, not just because he comes with a plethora of experience in leadership development and leadership skills, but also because he has been a very, very important and crucial part in my journey through cancer and beyond. And I would really like to take this opportunity to invite you to this Talkatail session and talk about how we can draw some parallels from what my journey has been into a normal individual's life, right? I always keep saying you don't have to go through something as traumatic as what I have to be able to identify the resources that you have within yourself and your surroundings in the present moment while you are equipped, and how do you utilize them to not just survive but thrive in the environment that you stay in. So, a very warm welcome to you, Murali, for this Talkatail session. And what are your thoughts about being a part of this session with you?
Thank you, Pragya. Thank you for having me. I think what I really wanted to say was that every human life on this planet is inspirational. Yeah, and we learn so. If we really choose to learn, we can learn from everybody that we encounter. I'm a very strong believer that you encounter, when I say encounter, you meet people, certain kinds of people in your life, and they come into your life for a reason, right? So I still remember hiring you in the team. I don't know how long ago it was, but I saw in you a very enthusiastic learner, young person who wanted to contribute significantly and was also open to different ideas. And so the bubbly, nature was what inspired me. And you were on the team, and yeah, I think initially we worked very closely, but then after that there were a lot of other managers whom you worked with, but you were always part of the team. And whenever I visited Pune for whatever work, we did have those chats. So I always enjoyed the conversations that we've had. Even after you left Vachusa, though we were not regularly chatting, but I think the conversations that we had were quite meaningful, quite inspirational. So thank you for that. It's not that I gave you an opportunity, you also gave me an opportunity to experience you as a person. Coming to the experience that you had and the kind of pain and suffering that you have gone through, I've been contemplating this, and one question that I have as I navigate through life, and this is a question that has always remained: is pain and suffering necessary for somebody to make meaning of their life? I always believed that yes, it was. And of course, many religious teachers and religions talk about this pain and suffering. Some call it the eternal sin, some call it as a cycle, some call it because of your karma, the actions that you do, the sins you have committed, whatever. The suffering is attached to that. Recently, I came across a video by a person called Myron Golden. He was in a podcast with a person called David Shands. They have not heard the whole podcast, but this piece really, really stayed with me. And in that piece, Myron Golden talks about the growth of a tree. And he says the tree grows in two directions. It grows in a direction which we all see, which is above the ground, grows towards sunlight, grows the fruit bearing part of the tree, or the flower bearing part of the tree, which is the beautiful part, right? I mean, so you see that growing, but there is also growth that we don't get to see. The root system grows in complete darkness, goes through all kinds of terrible struggles, breaks through tough resistances, huge challenges. But what Myron observes is that the fruit bearing system is identical to the root bearing system. So taking off from Myron, and he calls these two directions of growth, and both are growth, by the way. Many a times we believe that pain and suffering is not growth. But after having heard Myron, I feel that's growth too. So he calls that, I mean, the technical term for that growth, the growth in the darkness, is called gravitropic growth, because it grows towards gravity. And the phototropic growth is towards the sun, right? So there's growth in two ways. The more stronger and deeper the root system is, the more growth the phototropic tree has. So going back to your point, I don't think there is any human life on this planet who has not grown gravitropically. Yeah, it could be shallow. It could be like a hydroponic plant, which has very small root system, and it could be weak phototropic. It may not weather all the storms that life brings up. However, there has been a growth. So going back to your experience, and I think listeners to this podcast and both of us should not be under the impression that we need to seek such suffering and pain. I'm not suggesting that, and nobody suggests that. I think this pain and suffering is part of growing up. And in what form and shape it comes, I don't think we can decide that. We have absolutely no control over that. But what we can do with it is certainly within our control. So I think reflecting on the experience that you've had, it's, I think, immense suffering. It is immense pain, not only for you, but for your immediate family, the whole caregiving, people who are in caregiving, your mother, your sister. And I think we always, in retrospect, feel that we are much stronger on the other side of the storm, other side of the suffering. Yeah, that would be my response.
Since you spoke about pain and suffering, I would talk about that. But what a beautiful thought about the phototropic growth and gravitropic, right? A lovely example. And the reason I resonate with it so much is, after going through this experience, the most connected that I've been to any living creature has been a plant. It has been absolutely therapeutic for me. I have been able to nurse back some of the plants that, I left at my hometown when I was in the ICU back in Pune. And when I came back to my hometown, I looked around and I saw most of the plants had stopped blossoming. There were no flowers, there were no fruits. And what I realized was that any kind of growth that was possible, even for me, would not have been possible without the nourishment that I would have needed from my loved ones, from the doctors, from the nurses. And I immediately was able to come back and give it to the plants here. It was a great therapeutic feeling for me to be able to nurse those plants back to, blossoming again and going in the same growth pattern that they were growing earlier. So I would definitely agree that I look at myself and I resonate most with plants after this journey. Coming back to pain and suffering, they're very similar terms, and yet I would say that they are distinctly apart. What I've experienced through my journey has been that there has been a lot of pain, immense pain, and over a period of time, especially during the initial stages of my recovery, I was constantly converting that pain into suffering. After a certain period of time, I realized that I have the choice of whether I want to make that pain a suffering. I remember back in the ICU when I was conscious for about 5 or 6 days. I was still trying to comprehend what was happening around me, and I remember constantly telling me, doing a self talk to myself and telling me that Pradnya, this is just pain. It is physical pain that is happening to you. Do not let it affect you mentally. Do not attach an emotion to it. I think the moment we attach an emotion to the pain, it automatically becomes a suffering. And I'm agreeing that it is challenging. It is absolutely difficult. I was also not able to do it for a certain period of time. But once you're able to identify that you are creating your own suffering, I think that is the time that you will be able to go back and say, okay, Pradnya, this is just pain. You just have, this is pain and it has a limit. So I was able to identify my pain limits at, okay, how far is this going to go? It is still going to be just painful. Suffering, I believe, in my scenario, came from a lot of irritation, frustration, a lot of helplessness that I felt during that period of time. I was helpless because I was not in control of my own self. I was dependent on others, and that helplessness, I think, was one of my major reasons for for me to suffer in that space.
I think, yeah, thank you for bringing that distinction, right? Pain can be physical or emotional, and the response to the pain is what causes the suffering. So I think there is a distinction. However, what I'm trying to kind of get at is that though the suffering is avoidable, we humans go through that suffering because there is growth in that as well. Even for you to realize that it's not the pain that's really causing whatever I'm going through, the meaning that I make of this pain, the loss of control, the helplessness that I'm experiencing, that's causing the suffering. And I can do away with that. That realization can happen only when you encounter suffering. If you have not encountered suffering, this insight, this is not going to happen, right? And again, I want to kind of repeat myself that we are not suggesting that you need to deliberately seek suffering. We're not suggesting that. But I'm saying that life does present you with situations, and your first reaction to it is, the natural reaction is that there is some growth that's possible. You grow even in that. That's all I'm saying. So thank you for bringing that distinction. I think it's a very wonderful distinction that we need to make.
Absolutely agree, Murali, because I also identified that distinction after going through a certain period of time where both of them, they were functions of each other and kept, yeah, I think that is something that I experienced for quite some time. And because my period of the ICU stay was long enough, right, 3 months in the ICU, the actual transition or the actual transformation actually happens within just a couple of days. There's a lot of rumination, the lot of space where you are struggling, you are fighting, you are resisting, and then when you're letting it go, that is when it actually happens within 4 or 5 days. Because I remember just about the time when I was being discharged out of the ICU, all the revelations or all the transformations that I experienced, the realization of it was just 5 or 6 days before that. However, the work that was being done, just connecting back to the roots in the darkness, all of that happened for 2.5 months in the ICU. And I also want to, really bring out this factor that, when you're initially inflicted with pain or suffering, there is a lot of false hope that you're surrounded with. Because what happened in my case was that I did not want to see reality as is. So there was a lot of dreamy outcomes that I was looking for. To be able to get out of the ICU in the next 2 days, start walking, start talking, which is great to have a hope of, but how realistic was it? Very similar to SMART goals. We teach SMART goals, so you set SMART goals for yourself. But in such space of trauma, it is extremely difficult to be able to see reality as is. And when I say see reality as is, I am not saying be hopeless. I am saying to be able to experience everything that you're experiencing in that space and still know that this is what it is. So I think that definitely is something which is important to see, because I spent a lot of time initially in a lot of uh, outcomes that I expected, which didn't seem real.
Yeah, I completely resonate with the experience that you have. So I was just reading this story by Leo Tolstoy, Death of Ivan Ilyich. In that story, Tolstoy, talks about a protagonist who's been very successful as a jurist. He's a judge, lives his life, and then he's suddenly inflicted with a disease which leads to his death. And most part of the story is it talks about the thoughts that Ivan has lying on his deathbed. So I think when we go through a personal crisis of sorts, something like things like that you have gone through, I won't call it hopelessness or false hopes. It's like this. Let's say, metaphorically speaking, let's say, this plant is trying to grow in a rocky place. And we have seen so many plants of that kind, where you have rocks, tough rocks. You can see the hardness of the rock. You can feel it. You can see it. But you see this determined, resilient plant, sprouting through the cracks. And then suddenly this plant becomes a young plant and grows into a lush green plant. So I'm just wondering what the root of this plant might be thinking. For some reason, the seed from which this plant grew got embedded in this hard rock. And the root consciously or unconsciously knows that it can make it. Now, it might be foolhardy or foolish for the root to think, I will break this rock into two pieces and grow into a large neem tree or a peepal tree. That might be foolhardy, but there is hope. I don't know if you remember, I think the first WhatsApp that you sent me about your condition, we exchanged few messages, but you said something. You said, I have the courage or strength or something like that, that I will come out stronger from this, or I'll be back from this. It's just a blip.
I can and I will.
Yes, something of that sort. I don't remember the exact thing, but yeah, I'm saying that's hope. You may not be aware in that moment. Yeah, you might like the foolhardy plant might expect to walk out of the ICU like a normal healthy person in a couple of days. No, it requires more work because this is rock. The roots have to really dig deeper and anchor themselves for the plant to grow. But then the seed from which this has come knows it. So the hope is not for the plant to survive and thrive, but for the plant to be there to be able to do whatever it's supposed to do. I don't know what it's supposed to do in a rocky place, but that's what it is. So that's hope, in my view. So when I'm going through this crisis, a crisis unprecedented, crisis that doesn't seem to end soon, I think it's important for me to, it's difficult, it's very difficult to really sit and listen to my soul, to listen to what's really bubbling up there. Cockle, MacArthur, and Blair I think these are two ladies, Joan MacArthur, Blair. Janie and Joan came up with this model of appreciative resilience. And there are three pillars to this building resilience. I think your story kind of beautifully lends to the model, though you may not see it that way, but I see it that way. So the first step is, uh, you know, working your way through despair. That's the most difficult thing because you are in suffering. Like we talked about, the first step of fighting through despair is to separate out, make this distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is real, whether it's physical or mental, pain is real, but suffering is optional. So once you are able to, you have to go through that pain and suffering to a certain stage before you can really discern and say, this is different, right? So once you've done that, you have worked through the despair. Then what happens, I think, is as you're working through despair, sometimes you draw hope from yourself. Like, for example, the belief that you're going to come out stronger, you're going to be back, all of that, right? You could draw hope from that. But your physical condition tells you that no, that's not going to happen, right? So you're again constantly in despair. So you're always oscillating between hope and despair. And then you talked about guilt, anger. That's where forgiveness comes in. So the forgiveness is the third pillar for you to be able to build this resilience. Now, you not only forgive yourself, which in your case needs to be true. I mean, yeah, your father's passing on is a very traumatic, very challenging situation, especially with you not keeping well and plus what he was going through as well. Yeah, you did what you did, but having realized that you did your best in that situation and being able to forgive yourself helps you come over the despair and the guilt, right? So that's the first step. The second step is the anger. The anger could be, you may call it fate, life, whatever, right? The anger could be, why am I being put through this? The anger could be that, why should life serve me this at this stage? What did I do? I've lived my life in the best possible way. I never thought anything bad for anybody else. So the anger is, why am I being put through this? Or it could be anger towards others. Sometimes when we go through this, you could think that it's because of somebody else I'm in this situation. They have put me through. So there is anger towards them. Unless these are worked with, the hope doesn't emerge. So you need to really work through your despair. You also need to work through your forgiveness. Till you are able to do that, hope doesn't emerge. Once you have done that, I think in retrospect, having worked through the despair, having worked through forgiving yourself, now you're ready to live a resilient life, and that's what it is. So I think all of these are connected. Maybe we are not consciously aware in the moment because the pain is so intense and so big in our lives, not only for us, even for our intimate relationships, people who go through this pain, along with us. I mean, it's very difficult to explain that, right? I mean, why should your mother at this age go through what she went through? It's very difficult to explain. But I think fighting through the despair and even giving you hope in some form and shape, supporting you through this whole journey, is part of her work, right? It's made, probably she has increased and enhanced her capacity to be resilient, right? So I think these experiences are quite meaningful and they really connect the dots, right? Yeah. That's what my response would be to what you said.
And just like in the model, I think, Murli, they are highly interdependent on each other.
Absolutely.
A lot of people ask me, so what happened step by step? How, and it's very difficult for me to give an answer to that because there has been a constant back and forth in the entire journey, in the entire process. You know, there was not one moment of time that I became fearless and then now fear doesn't exist. Very recently, somebody at an event asked me, so now has the fear of death gone? And I really, wanted the person to reflect on, can you ever be, can you ever eliminate fear? Can you ever be rid of fear, right? And if you do, how is that going to help you? So for me, it has definitely been that back and forth journey from going back to some moments of despair, coming out of it, being in a space where I could experience love, I could experience compassion, I could experience the hope that I got from all the loved ones. They created that foundation for me when I was losing in on, wanting to give this whole thing a fight. So it continuously went back and forth. I think what works, at least what worked for me in when I look back and say that I was resilient, I think definitely was a balance of things. None of the extremes of the courage or the extremes of the fear, I think worked. It was to be able to find the balance in everything that I was doing, and it was also important during the recovery. When life is saved, I remember one of the doctors telling my sister when she was here, when I was in the coma, the day I was conscious, the doctor told my sister that life is saved. Now it's time to sustain it. And it was a beautiful reality check for everybody in the family and me to know that, this is going to go back and forth. And how you respond, how you reflect on everything that is coming and surrounding you is actually going to define how resilient you are. And I also feel, Murli, it is not. So people also tend to ask me that, now this journey is something because of which, you have transformed. Of course, a lot of credit goes to the journey per se of what I've gone through in those 3 months in the ICU. But I think how I've responded is a reflection of my 35 years of life. It's and not just on the positive side of it, also on the days that I let myself give into the fear, I let myself say that no, I can't go through this, is also a reflection of the things that I've learned in the last 35 years. So I think it is very unfair to say that 3 months transformed something in me. I think it's been a realization of an entire lifetime that I was able to do in those 3 months.
No, I completely resonate with all that you have said so far, right? Especially life's experience is never, ever in a linear fashion. It's not linear.
Yes.
It's always, it's very non-linear. Sometimes it's oscillation, sometimes it is spiral. So it's very different, right? I think how the experience gets structured depends on the possible resource that gets developed in the human. When I say resource, it's a deeper capacity, it's an enhanced capacity. So it depends on, what kind of capacities that a human needs to navigate life going forward is what is getting built. So that's how the experiences, are, for want of a better word, let me say it. And I also completely agree with you that you cannot discount the fact what the seed contained, right? And ignore what the seed contained just looking at the tree. The seed does not exist in that same form. I mean, if you really see the plant, the seed, the coat is gone, the fleshy part of the seed is gone. It springs it into life, but there is something of the seed that continues to remain in the plant. And that's what it makes it a plant. That's why you never get a guava from a mango seed.
Yeah.
So to say that you are who you are because of this experience is like saying that I think it's a very simplistic or a reductionist way of looking at life. So I'm saying that it's a series, right? It's like reading a book, and reading the last chapter of the book does not make the book complete, or reading the first chapter of the book or reading some parts of the book does not make the book complete. So life has to be experienced in its entirety, and all the experiences leading up to the experience that you have and the experience that you're going to have in the future would define who you are, right? So I would not agree that it is just this transformation or transformative experience. Unfortunately, human beings are not iron, because why I say that is, iron, when you put it through fire and put it through a process, transforms into steel. We are not iron. We are malleable. I would say, yeah, I would say that we are a living being in a moving context, ever changing environment. So there's a lot of things that one goes through. Coming to fear, unfortunately, and this is unfortunate, we all experience emotions and we tend to categorize emotions as good and bad. This is an unfortunate, and I think it's the way we are taught, and it's the way we experience emotions. Emotions, for sure, some are comfortable, some are uncomfortable. However, every emotion is a piece of data, is a piece of information. It tells you the way you are interpreting a context or a situation. So if you are experiencing fear in the moment, the question to ask is, the meaning that I'm making of the context of the situation, is it the right thing to do? Fear of death, I think, is important, because only then you live your life meaningfully. And I'm smiling as I'm saying this because I recently started experiencing that. Not because I went through a massive life situation like you, but having really turned 60, uh, and I'm 62 now. I will be 62 in October. Having come closer to the possible death tells me that you don't have infinite time. When you're younger, you don't talk about death, or you don't think about death, primarily because you think, oh, you have infinite time left and you have the whole lifetime. When you're, let's say, 20, 60 looks like 40 years away, right? But when you're 60, 70 looks like 10 years, 65 looks like another 5 years. So you're only getting closer to the end. Now, how close and how far, it's anybody's guess. Nobody can predict that, right? It depends on, and I truly believe that once you have lived your purpose, once you're done your job on this planet, it's time to go. It's like, you know, actors on the stage. Once your part is done, you have to go. You have to go. You cannot still say, no, I will hold the stage. You cannot. So fear of death is natural. Fear of death, the way I see fear of death is, it tells me that there is limited time and I have to make the time that's remaining count and make it meaningful and purposeful, whatever I want to do with it. I don't have the luxury of wasting it. That's what it's reminding me. Uh, so that's how I look at fear.
Yeah, I think for me, after having a near death experience, it has been the whole response towards fear has been very different. Um, and it also depends on what situation you are in. Just because I responded to fear a certain way during my crisis in the ICU does not imply that I will respond in the same manner to the fear every time I'm surrounded by fear. Yes, at that point of time, there were some pieces to which I actually gave in to the fear, so that I allow my body to heal. I allow my body to um, accept what was happening in terms of healing. Might not be the same way that I will respond to fear going forward. I think the beauty is in the power of the choice that you have of how you are going to respond to a certain fear when you identify it. I think that is one of the most powerful aspects for me that I've identified through this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we need to learn as human beings is our ability to discern in the moment.
Yes.
It's very, very easy to kind of sit and talk like this post facto, right? It's always good to have a reflective conversation. Of course, it teaches us a lot, but having the capacity to be able to do this in the moment is, I think, true growth. true evolution as a human, because that's the opportunity, that's the thing. So I'm going through this, I have a condition for which I'm going through physiotherapy. So there was pain previously, but my physiotherapist tells me that when we're doing these stretching exercises, you will experience more pain than what you were experiencing before. But I assure you, after the stretches, you will be in a better place. And that's what happens. That's what happened to me, and that's my felt experience, right? So being able to develop that capacity to be able to deal with that pain in the moment and be able to discern and make the choice to respond to it in a functional way as a human being, right? Is the most important thing.
True, true. A lot of people also recommend me to do a lot of meditation, spend 1 hour meditation in the morning. And what I've observed is that now, earlier, by the conventional method, I used to meditate for 1 hour in the morning. Now, there is so much of peace that I can sit at any point of time, anywhere through the day and meditate when I feel that, yes, this is the time that I need it the most. More than making it a habit for an hour in the morning or an hour in the night, if you can reap the benefits of meditation through the day at the moments when you need it, I think that is where your true meditation will come to work.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I remember Jiddu Krishnamurti speaking about this, about meditation. So he says meditation is not an act that you do for 20 minutes or 1 hour. It's the way you live your life, right?
Yes.
So the question is, are you focused, absolutely focused on whatever you're doing right now? That's the key. Are you getting distracted? Is your attention going everywhere here and there? No point in sitting for 20 minutes with a focused attention and the rest of the day you're kind of busy filling it up with activities that probably don't make sense. But yeah, you're right.
Every time that I have a conversation with you, like I also told you, when I was in the ICU, one of the biggest factors that let me keep moving on was your video message that you had sent.
Yeah.
And it was extremely important for me to have that from the people that I know that I could draw that inspiration from. So it's always such a refreshing reflection to have a conversation with you. Yeah, I'm really glad that we could do this.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Pragya.
much.
Take care for the day.